Hi, you're listening to the Tech Lines podcast, and my name is Marina.
And I'm Andre. And today we have another special guest for you. What a treat. I'm excited to introduce Arianna Maschietto, who is here to talk to us, to you all, about her experience in partnerships with small companies, large companies, driving innovation. But Arianna, why don't I pass over the word to you and let you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Andre, for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure. And ciao to everyone listening tonight. Who is me? Well, when I need to define myself, I always say that I'm first a ballerina, a backpacker, and a tech enthusiast. I've been always, into tech ever since I started, university. After studying finance, I really found like technology was my field, and for that I decided to join Microsoft for a few years. I worked there, and I loved it. I had great opportunities. I was surrounded by the fantastic team that really allowed me to do and to create as much as I could, always together with the external partners, since we were working into this SMB segment, so small and medium enterprises. And then I decided to move to Asia and do my MBA, and that's where I actually met my next job that was in a plug and play. So traveling all around the world as much as possible, and then back to Milan and starting a new activity.
So, Ariana, you used to work for an outstanding company, Plug and Play. It is the largest innovation platform which helps startups bring innovation to the world. And it must have been a terrific experience, right? Plug and Play is a hub which creates partnerships between blue chip companies and startups, which leads to mind blowing breakthroughs. What were your favorite examples of startups Plug and Play helped to bloom?
Exactly. As you mentioned, plug and play does and makes open innovation and reality. So it really translates what's a theory into concrete examples. And it does it, all over the world. But I was lucky enough to do it in Italy, in my home country. And over the past 4 years, because I've been working there for 4 full years, I've seen plenty. Many of them clearly cannot be disclosed, but there are some that are public and are used by people. But if I have to think about one example, there is one that really struck my mind. Have you ever thought what happens after you throw something into your waste, into your recyclables? I literally never thought about that. I'm like, okay, I'm doing my job as a great citizen, but in reality, never wonder what was happening after. We had one example that I want to bring to attention. It was between A2A, which is the largest multi-utility company in Italy, and Grey Parrot. Grey Parrot is a female-led startup based in the UK. And what they do, they have been building an AI platform that recognizes and sorts waste. So why was this, my most interesting example to bring here into this podcast? Well, it was because this really followed the path of open innovation. So we started by talking to our corporates, understanding their needs. We then identified, from all over the world, this startup. We introduced them. They started with a pilot project. The pilot project went perfectly, brilliantly, and then they decided to invest in the startup, and plug and play followed with the investments. So I think that was a perfect example, because today they are full-time, suppliers. The startup is a full-time suppliers of A2A, and so this really tells the story of open innovation from start till the end.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And there's so many aspects here. It's just so exciting. Well, first of all, you mentioned that it's a female owned and female led startup that is just so inspiring to hear. And then also, I'm hearing that you had a large Italian corporate company that is responsible for something, fairly massive, and yet sometimes thought as low tech as garbage collection, or actually in reality involves a lot of really high technology, especially these days, connecting with the company all the way across Europe, right? It could have been anywhere in the world, really. And then enabling them to work together and bring something that affects people in their daily lives. So in such a major way. I think it's such a privilege that we get to work on stuff like this. It's amazing.
Exactly. And also it's because it's something that it's, at the end of the day, impactful for us.
Yeah.
We talk so much about climate change, and how recycling and waste recycling, it's so important at the end of the day to avoid seeing those mountains of garbage that are all over and in the poorest countries, right? So we all need to play a part. And a multi-utility is what it does every day by collecting garbage from households, from the streets, and to know that that is defined as recyclable, then is also recycled and then reuse and re-put into circulation, because it can become something else. That's where we make a big difference, and that's where technology makes an incredible difference into our daily lives.
Our listeners will remember that one of our earlier episodes where we discussed Partnernomics by Mark Brigman, we talked quite a bit about the role that partnerships have to play in driving innovation. And every time I see something like this happen in reality, I'm just over the moon, because the point is proven that companies coming together with unique know-how and unique approaches, but also unique market access and so on, they just make things happen that are otherwise impossible. And it's just so inspiring. All right. And plus, it's just all the more inspiring when you can say, well, this innovation is not something nebulous, whatever, cloud, this, the AI, that. It's just specifically trash that you're throwing out doesn't come back flying in your face, but ends up being made into something useful. That's beautiful.
Well, the key point is that partnering makes innovation grow faster. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like by literally working together, they can
Mm.
make great things in a short amount of time too. So innovation doesn't stay as something so abstract or like marketing, a key marketing word, but it's reality. And that's what is most important.
You talk about reality. This connects, hopefully, to the next question that I have for you. The nature of your job for a while has been connecting blue chip large corporates with small, recently established startups that are either finding their way in the market or maybe just recently entered the market. And I guess the mentality and the approaches within those companies must be quite different. So, what in your experience have been the key differences in, for example, building trust and alignment between these kinds of really different partners?
You couldn't have stated it better. you know, Sometimes there are two completely different universe. Also because many people working in corporation haven't worked in startups and vice versa. So when I talk to them, what I'm trying to really stress is the fact that before building a working activity, a working relationship, they need to work on building a personal rapport. Okay. So you get to understand who's in front of you, who's this person, who's Andre, Okay, we discussed before starting about going skiing, and so I understand who's this person, and then you can work on that other relationship. But what is key in building any kind of rapport is communication, making things clear. I have a problem, I state it to you. You have this need, I tell you clearly what is the need. And it's important that both parties understand that there are lingos that are, own of the company, and they need to have this transparency, this really full alignment before starting. One of the problems that can come up is the imposter syndrome. This is another thing that startuppers and founders can have, because they're the small fish here, and you have the big guys there. So how do you deal with that? One thing that it's important to remember is we both have chosen each other, like any relationship. So if I am sitting here talking to you who are the big guy, you have chosen me. And you guys need to understand me. I need to understand you. We need to find some middle ground. So in this case, communication for me is always it's been something that I stressed highly in making sure that things were going smoothly. And there were some very fun things coming up, like documents not sent in English. And you're like, It's an international startup. Or fears. Sometimes, big corporation are fearing the startups are stealing information. And what I was reminding them is that, yeah, not they resell this information and then you crush them because you have the best lawyer and it's done for them. So avoid that. And so there have been many tricks, but the most and foremost thing was a transparent communication. And that's something that I could repeat over and over. Make things clear. Give me a timeline. I need to do this. I need to do that. Both parties. That's it. Corporations are slower because they have a structure to respect. Startups are running fast and they need to stay, beyond the corporate and trying to make sure that the things are happening. But at the end of the day is if I know that I need time or if I know that I have longer amount of time, from the startup perspectives, fine, perfect. Things will go in the right way all the time. Otherwise, things normally would get screwed up or more difficult. Let me tell you that.
I love it. I love it. Look, I love it all the more because depending on when you all are listening to this, you will have heard this theme come up again and again with our guests. It's communication, and also one of my favorite sayings now is that companies don't build partnerships; people build partnerships.
Exactly.
It's yeah, it's all about it. I think there's no apparently there isn't any better advice than that. So if you're taking away anything, this is probably the takeaway. And yes, also please remember to communicate in the language that your partner understands. That helps for sure.
Yes, that's very important.
Great. So, as far as I understand, there are a lot of challenges a startup could face while it launches its first partnership, right? So, what are the biggest challenges then, and what would you recommend to do to avoid common mistakes?
So, Marina, when I was, talking to, I really talked to so many startups. Many of them had just started their activities. Others were more established ones. There have been things that I've seen that were very annoying to me, and that something that became a lesson that came like at the very beginning of my journey. And we had this startup that saw this huge opportunity with this large corporate, that would have given them like great reputation, despite they were just at the start. What they did was they focused all their attention on them. They changed their solution. They tailored their solution exactly to their needs. That then was not, they couldn't resell it to other people. We're talking about open innovation. It's not a merger and acquisition here, right? So when you do, you need to make sure that you have a product at the end of the day that you can make also other people use in a way or in another. So the first mistake that, startups, newly established startups, I would suggest they need to avoid is to make sure that they have their own core product, service, and they do adapt, but they do not completely give out or tailor 100% for one. Because when you bet all your eggs in one basket, then if you drop the basket, it's the end. So that's the first thing that I would suggest absolutely to avoid.
So, if I may paraphrase it in a more general way, they should think about their partner needs, not just about their own needs while making the product.
They need to think and to tailor their solution, but not to make it just a solution for one partner. Because when you adapt it completely to them and then you're focusing all your time, all your budget just in one, it's, if you're betting on just one, then you're losing sight of all the other opportunities. Despite that could be the biggest one. But I've seen, a startup failing into this because they dedicated almost a year and a half to one client, and then the client didn't decide to continue with them. And so what is that? Time wasted, money wasted. And when you're a startup, you need to be careful where you invest your money. Another things that I always advise is do not do things for free. It could be something that would allow you to open more doors, more likely. But then when people get things for free, they do not see the value in that thing. They are now willing to invest money in that thing that they got it for free. Just put it for us, when we try an app for free, then it's really hard for us to convert and switch to buy something. And that's the same thing. And so corporates would not dedicate the right amount of time, would not dedicate the right amount of efforts that are necessary. So it's always better to have the possibility, to cover the costs at the beginning of your journey, cover the cost of your projects, of your pilots, also because at the end of the day, there are people working. And I always think it's so important to pay those people who are working on something. And the last thing that I would really suggest is, when you're started and you're starting doing open innovation, so doing a project with a corporate, don't think about going and deploying the solution or the project on the entire corporation, because that is gonna increase your timings and increase the corporate costs. And corporates, despite being probably very rich, do not intend to invest all their money on just one solution. And from the startup perspective, to select a small perimeter really allows to have either a quick win, so to showcase their client that they are capable of doing what they said, or to adjust at a faster pace whatever is not working in that direction. So make sure that when you're starting a new project, really identify a perimeter that will, also lower the cost. So the partner will also be more interested into paying for that, and they will see the results faster. And think also about the corporate. If I was the one, going to my boss saying, "Hey, boss, we really need to invest this a small amount of money into this solution to test it, okay? And I can bring faster the results, the positive results, that my boss can see the impact of what I've seen," then what is going to happen? Your boss is going to praise you, is going to see, "Oh, this guy is actually really smart at this solution." And more people are going to see the effects, because probably the boss is going to talk, to other boss or to their boss, and you also see more recognition, get more recognition. And so that, at the end of the day, we're people and we like to do things well. So defining a perimeter can have a really positive impact on both sides of the equation in this case.
Terrific. Yeah, I think I guess the learning here for me is really be ambitious, but be specific, right? And then the two things are not mutually exclusive. You're not limiting yourself by setting the perimeter that you described. You're actually setting yourself up for success by really being well focused. Right? And then you can expand, and then the sky's the limit. And then every large corporate at some point in their existence probably was a small, not every, but many large corporates used to be a small startup in the beginning. So it's definitely possible.
Absolutely.
Arianna, what resources would you recommend to read or to watch? I don't know, to listen any podcasts useful for startup representatives, I don't know, like for startups, to understand better how to partner bigger companies, if there are any?
That's a great question, actually. To be honest, I've been searching for something that's specific. I've been reading books about past experiences. Um, five lessons from three great entrepreneurs, I think, was my go-to book, that gave me lots of inspiration. But then what I realized is that open innovation is something new, and there are not many players actually doing it. And so the greatest learnings were coming from us doing the things, me talking to my colleagues, asking what was working on one situation, what was not working on other situations, and really putting down everything. And I love structure in life, and so we started. I don't even know if I can say this, but we started by calling the Bible. So the first edition of these, documents where we were structuring, how to partner with a client, with a new partner, and how to make this, dual partnership working. We call it the Bible. And we had add-ons, from different teammates that then brought in more experience and more experience, and so it became always a bigger thing and always a more detailed and more updated, because we tried to really update it, because examples were coming out with sprawling at a certain point, and so trying to keep that as a great example. I need to say, more coming from our own experience, than others.
Is it open?
No, it was plug and play. There is actually an old colleague that exited Plug and Play, that created a consulting company, Simon. I can give more details, some links about him on LinkedIn. And that's, he did create some workshops for partners from his experience.
But I think, yeah, I think generally the advice is also not to be something to sneeze at. I would say that a lot of the time, what we're working on, there are there's almost like there's an interesting gap. Let's see, Marina, if you and I, if the tap is successful in filling it, there's a gap between fairly generic advice about, which is also useful, especially if you're starting out in the field. And there's lots of good materials we've been discussing before that describe the field of alliances and partnerships and so on. That is useful. But then I think what Arianna is pointing at is that as you get into the specifics of technology partnerships, it is a bit of a green field. And so there is a lot of inspiration to be drawn from the fact that what we are learning together is actually in itself innovative and new. And so it's worth, I'd say, I suppose the outcome of that is networking. Let's talk to each other. Let's make sure that we connect as professionals and interested in this. Which is all to say, although I normally say this at the end of the podcast, but why not say it twice? Do subscribe. Do subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes of the Tap to discuss this and other interesting topics. But that's not all we have for you today. There's one more interesting question that we definitely wanted to dive into.
Arianna, what are your ideas about being a woman building partnerships? Because when I had experience partnering companies, I was at the level when I was working with other developer teams, but not CEOs or other high flying positions. And I would say that I had no pressure at all, because these were young men, mostly men, but they treated me equally. I guess that's the point of our generation. However, I've heard that if you're working with higher positions, it is very common that there are a lot of challenges for a woman who's building a partnership. So, what challenges have you experienced on your path, if there are any?
This is a very interesting point. On one side, I think it's generational. On one side, I think it's the cluster of people, and on the other side, I think it's the environment we work in. And I think I've been super lucky, like throughout my experience, both in Microsoft and Plug and Play. Sometimes I think about when I was 26, and I would be talking to some C-levels. First, I was allowed to talk to C-levels, which means that the people around me, my teammates, my boss, were giving me the chance to go and talk to these people. I think it's personality. In my case, I grew up with two brothers, and I'm quite outspoken. I don't really care who you are. If I want to get an information out of you, I'm going to ask. If you don't want to respond, you don't respond. And so, sometimes I felt that I could just go and don't be bothered by the title. For me, it's always about building a rapport with a person. So whoever you are, the title doesn't matter. You are a person first. So that's something that I've done. I did find myself once in a tricky position, and the guy was not even the CEO of the company, to be honest. And he was not even way older than me. He was a couple years older. And he gave me an answer. I was like, that was not was not a good answer. And it was not gender. It was not because of my gender. It was absolutely a very annoying answer to receive. He was not expecting I would bite back probably harsher than he did. And after that, we started a great working relationship, you know? And even we became friends. So despite 10 years have gone by, we're still friends. We'll still chit chat and, laugh about that. And so my advice is really, really to make sure that when you're communicated to a person, whoever the level is, whatever the gender is, whatever the inclinations are, age doesn't matter. Um, but something that I want to reinforce is the importance of having mentors, because sometimes you're young and sometimes you've not grown up with brothers that were mean to you because they're your brothers, your siblings, or sometimes you didn't have like a boss or a teammates that were supportive. So afterwards I was like in Plug and Play, had huge support. Even launch an activity just focused on female entrepreneurs, making lots of alliances. But having mentors, having female women that you believe have, a, can be of a great example for you. So people that can be your anchors, you can go and ask questions to. You can go and talk about a certain topic and ask advices. How would you deal with that? How would you have not dealt with that? That's super important. I surrounded myself always by mentors, more when I was in Microsoft than in Plug and Play, but I kept the relationship throughout. And those women for me have always been, somebody to look upon to. And it really, I was saying the other day that I really want to nurture this network of women that I had the opportunity and I was lucky to meet. So create your circle of support. Then, of course, it should not be only women. 50% of the population are men. If men are not supportive, you can have all your women on your side, but then it doesn't work. So, of course, having also men, I always had male bosses, and they were the ones supporting me on a working environment. So I couldn't have been luckier. But having a mix of the two, I think it can really help.
That's so cool. Yeah. I would also say, if you're wondering, if you're listening to us, whatever stage of your career you're at, and if you're wondering, but how? Where do I find these amazing mentors? How do I surround myself with this supportive network? In my experience, and I would like to hear both of you actually, what you think about this. Just reach out. Find people that inspire you. Find people in your field that you are inspired by and you would like to learn something from, and reach out. Worst thing that can happen, they might not respond because they don't have the time. But that's actually, in my experience, the rare situation. More often than not, they will respond. And they will respond and, at the very least, provide you with some pointers, or it might flourish into a very fruitful long term relationship. But what do you think? Do you think it's worth just reaching out?
I'm totally down for that. I'm always about, in case the people do not care, do not answer. Otherwise, you're going to start a wonderful relationship. If you are humble and, famished to learn about their experiences, these people normally are open to tell, their story, and open to support you. It's as you said, Andre, it's more like this than the opposite. People are really eager to support. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it can be, just for half an hour. Sometimes it can be a lifetime relationship. And the ones that I started building, I was 26, I'm 37 now. They continue, and I keep finding new women that are super inspiring. And they can be even younger. I met this girl at an event. Well, she's not my mentor, but I should probably reach out to her. She's like 17 as she started this quantum girls in quantum, and she's from Chile. And you're like, you're 17 and you're talking about quantum and you're still studying in high school. Who are you? Like, get out of this body. How is this possible? Why it was not me? But people, there's no age. Sometimes there's no we're lucky. There's no geographical boundary. find these people, reach out to them. They're going to be your superwoman, your superheroes. And, both men and women will be more than ready to help.
Amazing. Well, with that, I think this is about all we have for you today. Arianna, it's been such a pleasure having you on. You've been a tremendous guest with so many insights and such passion for the field. It was a pleasure talking to you. Many thanks to everybody who's been listening in to today's episode of the Tech Alliance podcast with Arianna, Andre,
And Marina.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, and have a great day, everyone.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow us on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay tuned. Links are below.
And catch you next time on the tab.